Greetings and salutations. This is HUGH JARSZ. How are you guys? It's another day, and I'm joined here by mental health professional, Paul. How are you, Paul?
How you doing, Hugh? How you doing?
Well, I wish the YouTube interface was a little bit easier at times, but yes. Anyway, we got finally got the logo up, but things happened down the bottom of the screen, which made it not perfect. No, I hate it not being perfect. Let's just say hi to everyone in the chat. So, hello, the Snark, GNS. Is that Gilbert and Sullivan? It's me, Mario Rui. Evening all. Yes. Well, it's 7 o'clock in the morning for me. I've still got my coffee here, waking up on the second cup of coffee, which gets me going. Tusk, I've sent you a link, mate. Feel free to join us when you're ready. Global Mom, always lovely to see Global Mom. She's awesome. Ricky Bell, g'day, mate. I've seen you a few times lately. Here we got the Snark. Ricky Bell, Keith Newton, hello, Keith. And Pearlfish, hello, Pearlfish. Dutch Heretic is here. Wow, awesome. And scrolling down, gee, there's a lot of comments. I haven't had time to read them yet. John Rapp's here, of course. Everyone give John Rapp the finger treatment as he so richly deserves. Oh, Tusk will be in here in a little bit. That's all right. We'll get going. So, Paul, let me call up that presentation that I wanted to show. Share screen. All right. So, what we're going to do today is have a look. What's the deal with conspiracy nutters? First of all, I want to say, when we say nutters, that's our opinion. All right? This is all opinion. It's not a diagnosis. It's not a professional assessment. We're just expressing our opinion, and we're allowed to express our opinion under free speech. But it just seems the most appropriate term for it. We want to understand what causes them to adopt their mindset. In fact, I'll just put Paul down the side so everyone can see him. Because that's bewildering to us. I've been watching, well, I've been on YouTube for 10 months, and I was probably watching videos for 9 months before that along this line. And it just amazes me. How did they twist their minds up such that they resist the truth so vehemently and adopt this mindset that just keeps the truth out of their head? And even though they profess that they want to have the truth. So that's what we want to have a look at. We'll look at a few examples of that. And this is just my structure, of course. Paul, you're quite entitled to take it in a different direction. How does their mindset affect their behavior? Because certainly there are plenty of examples where their behavior is appalling. What is the end result? Where do they end up? And how do we break them out of it if we can? In a lot of cases, we can't, I suspect. I just want to switch over now to what you sent me, Paul. That's going to be hard for people to read. I'll just see if I can zoom in a bit. And we'll sort of, there we go. All right, you want to take us through this?
Yeah, so what we'll do actually is I'll just come in a little bit before this. So to understand defense mechanisms, and people will understand where these listed defense mechanisms fit in. But right the way back, we go back right the way through the evolutionary scale. Take it back to the days where man was still developing, still evolving. The psychology behind that, the only way to survive at that point in time for man was to be suspicious of everything. So to question everything, because if we eat that berry, what's going to happen? If that animal or if that creature approaches us, how do we react? What do we do? Should we be scared of it? Should we accept it? Should we try and eat it? Should we not try and eat it? And all of those things lead to a psychological development process. Now, the point that we're at now is we're really fortunate insofar as we don't have those things to worry about anymore. Those things are natural to us. We've got a good idea of the environment around us. We know what's going on. So, but we still have these almost sort of these ancient psychological processes still going on live in the mind. When we're confronted with a situation that creates anxiety, and I'm not going to say that Sigmund Freud got everything right. He certainly didn't. But in one of his early papers, I think it was about 1926, if I get it right, it was republished about 1986. He listed defense mechanisms. These were revisited by Kramer in 2010. And the idea of a defense mechanism is it's quite simple and straightforward. So I hope people can follow it. But that people react to threats. People react to those threats normally with anxiety. So how do we react to those threats? We react to them with a defense mechanism. So when people, there was a paper done by, I think, Davidson and McGregor in 98, when that basically sort of concluded that when people experience emotion or a change in the personal circumstances which makes them anxious, or when they're confronted by a situation that they can't mentally process, the ideas are unacceptable, the situation's unacceptable. So defense mechanisms that were suggested by Freud kick in. They're subconsciously activated. People don't have, it's not a choice. Those defense mechanisms that exist, they're already there. They're pre-programmed from the days of caves. And Kramer in 2010, as a paper, started to look through this. And Kramer sort of narrowed these down. They were already in existence, but he narrowed them down to a more prominent list of defense mechanisms. And that's what I provided for you on the list. And if we look through the list, what you'll find is that the majority of every single person watching this will relate to every single defense mechanism on there at some point in their lives. And
it's just part of being human, isn't it?
It's absolutely human, yeah. And that's the first thing to understand, that people's defense mechanisms are natural. They've been established. They were established for thousands and thousands of years before we've got to this point. And these defense mechanisms, which are listed there, are people's responses to unusual confronting situations. And it's no more complicated from a psychology perspective than that. Once you've got a grip of these defense mechanisms and why people kick in, then everything starts to become clear. I've started to look at these more over probably the last couple of years, because someone at work told me about flat earthers, and it was like, seriously, it just unbelievable. And I started to look at it, and I've looked at it now for a couple of years. And as I started to look at it, it actually became obvious that there was more than just a psychology going on. There was probably a socio-economic issues that were involved and everything else, but we can come to that. But yeah, so I sent you this list really as just a key, really, that it's something to refer to, so that it breaks things down, so that it makes it more understandable.
Yep. So you want to go through each of the things on this list?
Okay. So in no particular order. And it's the one that we're seeing a lot of at the moment, especially with the coronavirus pandemic, is denial, where people just literally say, no, that ain't happening. And they just refuse to believe that something's happening. So quite often you'll see it in the early stages of grief, or you'll see it in the early stages of certain diagnoses, quite often in clinical care. We'll see people present initially with denial as part of a sort of an acceptance towards a particular diagnosis. We see it in the public at the moment. I almost don't want to say his name, Nathan Thompson, and the clown that he's hanging around with, who are just denying that COVID even exists. It's based on a lack of education. It's based on a lack of understanding, but it also feeds into the very most basic of defense mechanisms of denial. Just, I don't understand it. It's a bit scary. Let's just pretend it doesn't exist.
Can I just interrupt for a
yes,
second?
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to stop you. Give us your, but yeah, just saying it's based on a lack of education and that kind of thing. And I think that's true, but that alone is not enough to give you a Nathan Thompson. It's also, if we get to me, it's also arrogance and ego on top of it as well, and a desire to be smarter than everyone else, I guess, when for the majority of your life you haven't been, and you know it. That would be my uninformed guess on it all.
I completely agree. Absolutely agree. It's almost
there's nothing wrong with not knowing stuff. So
no, not at all. And I mean, there's things that we all don't know. Even it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what part of the educational spectrum you're on. It doesn't matter if you're just starting school or if you're hitting levels of Stephen Hawking. It really makes no difference as long as you've got that acceptance to learn and that ability and that understanding to be able to say, I don't know that. I'm going to listen to somebody who does. There's another psychology altogether, almost of narcissism, involved with people like Nathan Thompson, where they have almost maybe, and it's casting aspersion, not necessarily on him, but some people may have, it's all personal circumstances. People may have found a degree of social rejection. They may have found issues around rejection in the education system. They've been failed in some way or another. And then all of a sudden they find this conspiracy theory where they can project a lack of knowledge, but be accepted as intelligent. So they initially enter a conspiracy theory through denial, and then it progresses in other ways. I
think we'll get more into that later on. So if you want to continue with the Kramer list.
Yeah. So repression. Repression, again, you often see this with grief, where people just try and forget. They try and forget the anxiety causing factors in their life. So again, it's almost pretend it's not happening. So I've written it up there as the emu technique, because it's a little bit like that. It's bury the head in the sand, pretend it's not happening, and we can all move on.
You mean ostrich? Emus are Australian.
Ostrich. Apologies. I mean that's. Again, I'm sure that these are things that people will be able to relate to. Move on to regression.
Yep.
So regression is to revert to, exactly as I've said there, to revert to a childlike state of dependency. So you become angry at your needs not being met. Good update, I like it. To revert to a childlike state of dependency. So everyone has certain needs in life, and without going into Maslow's hierarchy of needs and everything else, but the need for shelter, the need for water, etc., etc. And nowadays we rely on, for instance, work to provide that. When the coronavirus pandemic began, people got very angry at governments because businesses left, right, and centre were closing down. And they were angry at governments. Well, what am I supposed to do for work? What am I supposed to do for money? How am I supposed to afford the mortgage, the rent, the food, the bills? And they channel that anger towards governments. Almost, yes, that anger should be there, but actually, there's also a defense mechanism contained within that. So by channeling that anger, it almost vents a lot of the anxiety that's being caused. Moving on to displacement. Again, you don't see this one generally as often, but it's a shifting of anxiety. So I'm trying to think of a good example. So for instance, again with coronavirus, just because it's very topical at the moment, rather than looking at the fact that coronavirus is potentially fatal, to say, well, it's potentially fatal, but actually it's more in line with the flu, and then ignoring the fatality side of it, or ignoring the mortality rate or the infection rate of the virus, and to just minimize it by saying, well, it's just like the flu, so if I catch it, I'm going to be okay. So that's almost,
well, not to mention the long-term damage that coronavirus.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But
Which
to
the flu
ignore
doesn't.
those things, no, quite. But to ignore those things and just to minimize the impact of coronavirus and the potential damage that it can do, and just effectively write it off as flu. I'm using coronavirus a lot at the moment as an example, just because it seems to fit so well in everyone's mind. Intellectualization. So intellectualization was proposed effectively as it's about people almost rational. It ties in a little bit, I feel, to rationalization, insofar as people think about things, people will try and get as much information about things as possible, and then sort of say, well, actually, okay, if it spreads, coronavirus spreads, it's airborne virus, carried on water droplets. If I do X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to be able to catch it. Therefore, the anxiety reduces, because they try and think of it. They try and think of a problem from an academic perspective that they may or may not be able to carry through. But they try and put things in those terms in order to be able to process what's going on.
I think it's a bit of a delay, so forgive me if it seems like I'm interrupting, but would a good example of that be where they say, oh, maths is just conceptual and stuff like that?
Yeah. Because again, to intellectualize something you have to have an understanding of it. So if somebody's saying, for instance, mass is conceptual, gravity's a pseudo force, therefore how can you prove? You're trying to intellectualize something, but misinterpreting part of the definition because you haven't got the intellect to fill that through. I don't know if that makes sense, if I've explained that very well.
No, I get that completely. Yeah. And it probably more, they just don't have the education, I guess, more than intellectualization, but although it might be both. So
yeah, absolutely. Rationalization. So I feel this ties into intellectualization. If you've got the education, or in fact, in fairness, not necessarily the education, but if you have researched a topic and researched the subject, and you do genuinely understand that topic and subject, then actually you can take that information and you can break it down into manageable blocks and manageable information. Having that in manageable sections of information then makes each one more subconsciously processable. So I'm just, again, trying to think of an example. I'm trying to swerve coronavirus.
No, well, stick to flat Earth, I guess. I mean, they're thinking about a dome and the sun revolving above us and things like that, even though they can't prove any of it.
Yeah. In fact, that's a superb example. So, okay, they approach it from sort of a confirmation bias perspective. They want it to be flat. So how do we explain it as flat? We'll break it down into these constituent parts and explain each constituent part, forgetting the fact that those constituent parts have got to work together.
Yeah, and that's a big problem with flat Earth in particular, is it all needs special proof for every single thing, whereas taking it works because it's a globe, not everything works on a globe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Next one, where are we to? We've done in rationalization. So reaction formation. Reaction formation is probably one of the biggest psychologically traumatic things that people can do to themselves. So it's exactly as I've put there, the outward, the externality, the external behavior of a person is actually 180 degrees different from what they truly believe. And the best way of expressing that is through homophobia, where people will show extreme hatred towards that community, when in fact that extreme hatred is because they have that underlying sort of suspicion that they may be homosexual and they can't process it. So to calm the anxiety, they just flatly deny it. It's a really, really destructive pattern of behavior, which actually can sort of lead people down the road of quite acute depression. And it can really, really mess with people's minds. Projection. I think this is something that everybody does at some point in life for one reason or another, which is literally where you try and almost project onto other people your anxieties, so your beliefs. So again, in Nathan Thompson going around and trying to spread the message of flat Earth, yes, that does spread the message, and that is ultimately his goal. But actually, the more people he has on side, the more he feels part of something. And especially if somebody's anxious, if you have that sort of that community, that feeling of community, where if you've got a unique belief or you've got an unusual belief pattern, then actually having more people who have got that same belief pattern is reassuring for you. So you feel that security, which then reduces the anxiety.
Yeah, their echo chamber, bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the last one, sublimation, which is probably, in fairness, something that I think we've probably all done, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. But sublimation is transfer of that anxiety, transfer of that energy into something very, very productive. So I know how it's been handled in the UK, where the government asks for volunteers to try and distribute food to people who were struggling for food, or to access the National Health Service set up a befriending service where if people were lonely and isolated, they could make a phone call, they would get through to just someone who'd volunteered, and they could just talk. It offers a very, very productive atmosphere, not only for the person making the phone call needing that bit of help and that bit of conversation to avoid the isolation, but it also offers the person making the call a good feeling, a feeling of reward, a feeling of productivity, a feeling as though they're contributing to society. And in that way, that feeling will actually sort of overcome part of the anxiety as well. So you do see it a lot where people have volunteered over the coronavirus pandemic, or you've seen it a lot where, people suddenly go off, they go through something really destructive in their life through, grief or traumatic relationship breakdown. And all of a sudden they'll go, oh, it's all right. I'm going to Africa. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to help build a school in Africa. And that's a classic example of sublimation. It's doing something to benefit others or benefit the community that will help you calm your anxieties.
That's interesting. I can think of a few things there. Apparently my audio isn't great, so I'm hoping I've changed the settings, so hopefully it'll be better now, but I might have to change over to my other mic. So what I wanted to expand on in that idea is that successful people they understand sublimation. They are always looking for ways to be productive with whatever emotions they have. They transform their energy into things that are productive, that give a return. So that's a very well understood concept among successcul people, and people who aren't successful tend to just sit on the couch and watch TV and get drunk and that kind of thing, because it's not very productive. I'm just comparing the two. I'm not making judgments on them, but you can see the effectiveness of one and the lack of effect, the relative lack of effectiveness of the other. And it's the same kind of thing. So I also say, psychologists also say the best, Dav, digital demonic Davros. I'll have to show this one. Yes. Anyway, I've lost where I was. Yes, psychologists will always tell you that you should to help with depression is to get out and exercise, because at the very least you're getting some exercise and you're getting a benefit out of that. And not only does that help with chemical imbalances and things like that, and that helps with depression, but it's sublimation as well. You're transferring that depressive energy, as it were, into something it is productive in a way that you get a benefit. So it's the same kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, because we can actually, in the UK at the moment, we can give people in certain areas of the UK, we can arrange for prescribed green exercise, in effect, which is part of a concept called ecotherapy, which is exactly that. You get people out, you get people into the countryside, and what the prescription actually does is gives people access to natural beauty spots where they may normally have to pay. And for a short amount of time, people can get in there for free for maybe a period of 6 weeks, but you can see clinically a massive change, a massive improvement. But it is part of sublimation. It ties into sublimation really well, because it is turning that negative energy, that negative emotion, and it is turning it into something positive. And exactly like you say, a lot of people, a lot of very successful people are often the ones who are able to transfer that anxious energy into something very productive.
And just in relation to conspiracy nutters in particular, and of course I say nutters as my opinion, the YouTube is basically an example of sublimation in their case. They go out and they make videos, and they say any old shit on their videos, but the fact that they've produced that, and of course they get the attention from it as well, that's part of the transfer of their anxious energy into something that they consider productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's sublimation on their part, but it also feeds into other psychological processes, exactly as you've just said. So it's there's a huge narcissism element there, insofar as they'll get people liking the video, they'll get people subscribing to the channel, and everyone on the planet would feed on that. Of course they would. But if you've got an unusual idea, if you've got an idea that goes against that common belief of society, or that scientifically validated belief of society, and if you're really out on your own, then there's a feeling of community there. The more people that enjoy what you're doing, enjoy what you're saying, will actually feed back into that. Actually, I'm right, because you know what? And exactly as Nathan Thompson's so quick to tell the world, I was the most popular guy on. I ran the most popular Flat Earth channel or whatever before it got closed down. And actually,
well, he even tells about that after it was closed down, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, because he's desperate for people to know. It may even be subconscious. He's desperate for people to know, I did that, and people follow me. It's almost sort of professing to be some form of leader, some sort of guru. He's
certainly doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, and and that's all it is. It's very, very basic. It's very basic, but he will gain a feeling of security from it. He'll gain a feeling of adoration from it, and that's why he'll fight so hard, tooth and nail, to keep that feeling going.
Which is strange, because his new group has, I think it's less than 1,000 people in it, because he actively punishes anyone who says anything he doesn't like. And so you think that'd be counterproductive to that idea. He doesn't have those 40,000 people or whatever it was anymore, giving him that adulation. I guess he's living off the fact that he once had that.
Yeah.
And he's not accepting the fact that most of them weren't anything to do. They were just watching. They were there to laugh at him.
Absolutely. And like you said at the start, there's an arrogance involved. So there's the arrogance of, I once had this. I was the guru. I was the guy that everyone turned to for this information. I was the guy that everyone followed. Therefore, if you want to follow me now, you do it by my rules. So it's almost like, I've achieved that goal now. I've achieved the peak, and having those groups removed has no effect on me, because I've already been there.
Yeah, he's Professor Emeritus now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a tweet. Okay, so we might move on from this list. Thank you for taking us through that. I think we can all relate with our interactions with the conspiracy nutters that we talk to, which is my opinion, to all of those. So I put together a structure just so that we could talk to it at least. And I think what you've said fits into this very well. Why can I not see the play button? So on to the next one. So the first one is what causes them to adopt their mindset in the first place. So you touched on this. They feel I think all of them feel they've been screwed over by bigger powers, whether it be a teacher at school or their parents or the government. You know, they've been in trouble with the law a lot or something like that. Generally, they have felt some form of loss. Again, you touched on this in their lives. A lot of them don't have jobs, or they were sacked because they were loudmouths or whatever. People like Ranty come to mind because he's been unemployed for a while. I've been unemployed for a while, but coronavirus is like that. I understand why. Just to clarify that a little bit, in my case, agents tell me they used to have 40 or 50 people applying for a job. Now they got 400 or 500. It's just that's the situation we're in. Whereas in Ranty's, I suspect it's because he's not very qualified and he'll go off on this conspiracy rant, although he's better than most people, though. Never really experienced the advantages of trusting. So we as a society work because we have to trust each other. It's the core of all human relationships. There has to be some sort of trust. And they, maybe they had abusive parents, or they never had any friends at school or anything like that. So they learned, they didn't really learn the benefits of trusting, because every time they trusted, they got their trust broken. Again, I'm just speculating, but that's the thoughts that are in my head, and I just want to test them with you. And often we keep finding people like Spurs and Nathan Thompson and a few others. They're often the children of well-off people. So they've always had money in their lives and have never really had to work hard for it. Nathan Thompson says he has his flyers business. Well, he's not really working hard for that, is he? And Spurs, no one knows what he does. No one thinks he does anything. But they might have gone to university, but because of their conspiracy mindset, they've rejected all of that. So they don't really know a lot, but they think they do. And because they don't have to worry about money, they think about these esoteric type things and convince themselves that they're correct about them. Whatever they came up with was correct. And I think that's a source of a lot of conspiracy nutters like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say people have a genuine distrust of governments. Look around the world.
A good reason.
Look how, yeah, absolutely. And I've got no issue with that whatsoever. We look at the governments of different countries, and if you could honestly say, hand on heart, you would trust them? I live in an area where, in the 80s, there was a government paper released to the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom saying that a particular area should be placed into a managed decline, basically allowed to go to the dogs, because the area wouldn't support their certain political agendas. Governments do not do a great deal to convince the public to trust them sometimes. Quite often they don't do that. So that natural distrust of the people in power, it almost leads itself into people over questioning government and over questioning processes. And governments don't get things right. They don't get things right all the time, mainly because they're human, but
most of the time,
quite often, absolutely, and because
they're doing
political agendas.
Well, they're also doing something that the rest of us never have to do, to figure out where you should put a road or a railway line or a hospital or anything like that. They're solving problems that the vast majority of people never even consider. Yeah, they'll complain about it if they don't like the decision, but yeah, you've got to cut them some slack to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I absolutely completely agree. But because governments wield so much power over everyone's day-to-day lives, the very moment a government does something that that doesn't quite sit right with you, it is anxiety inducing in itself. It is going to lead to a situation where your natural defense mechanisms do kick in.
All right. So I think it should have. Hello?
Hello? Hello, your audio went there.
I think he's not.
Robot quite bad.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get a great deal of what you've just said there, Hugh.
I think we've lost him.
Have we?
Don't tell me off.
Oh, no.
Oh, there you are.
There we go.
I think part of the problem is my internet connection's not very good at the moment. I was having problems yesterday. So hopefully it's, well, there's nothing I can do about that. That's up to the provider.
If I'm honest, it's
Everyone can hear me now,
fine
I presume. Yeah, it's probably better now. Oh, hello, Colin. I didn't see you there. Oh, Bob Nodell's got gyroscope. We got 37 watching. I'm rather amazed at that. Thank you, everyone, for coming, because there's a lot going on YouTube at the moment. I was a bit disappointed that I chose this time, then everyone else chose the same time. But and 37 of you chose to come and talk and listen to us. So thank you very much for doing that. So what I want to do is have a look at Brandon. He's a particularly strange sort of guy. Tusk knows a bit about his history. Do you want to fill us in a bit, mate?
Okay, Brandon Toy first appeared maybe about 18 months ago. Just you know, like most people do, a few comments here and there. But he said a couple of things which instantly set flags up. You know, he said that he was US military veteran. Fair enough, you know. It's a huge employer in America. That's nothing unusual about that. But he claimed that originally he was in the Navy, and there was it was in I think it was on Sean Hawkins' channel, but there was somebody in the chat who was currently in the Navy, and they called him on it, and he disappeared for a week or two, and then when he came back, he had completely changed his story. He said he was never in the Navy. He went back and deleted his comments. But now he was claiming he was a missile targeting specialist in the US Army. So, right, fair enough. That's, you know, again, it's a massive army. There's nothing odd about that. But anytime he was questioned on the equipment he used, he couldn't answer. Even the simplest, most basic questions. Like, he said he'd gone to artillery school, but when he was asked about the location and certain information about the school, he had to admit that he'd never been there. And then he constantly backtracks every time he's challenged and he's found out. He changes his story very, very slightly. You know, he went on to when he's on like Nathan Oakland's channel, when there's like 100 people watching, he's this superhero, you know, he's this war veteran, you know. But he went on to the Alex Jones podcast when there was like 10,000 people watching, and he changed from being a missile targeting specialist to a machine gunner with a mobile infantry unit. And that doesn't happen. Anybody who served,
no,
that doesn't happen. The army doesn't spend £1 million training you as a rocket technician and then put you on the back of a Land Rover. It just simply doesn't happen, you know. So when he was questioned on that, he said there was no need for his unit where he was deployed. So his unit was retrained as military police, except him. His entire unit, which is a small unit, usually about 8 to 12 people.
Yeah.
You know, because they all live in the same vehicle, they all travel in the same vehicle. It's necessarily a small unit. So, see, that's fair enough. But if he had trained as a military policeman, then he'd have to answer questions on that military law, which of course he wouldn't be able to answer. But every soldier can use a machine gun as part of your basic training. And when he was called on that, he changed it again. Just it's very, very slight tweaks, you know. But it's just enough to keep the facade going, because anybody that hasn't served and doesn't understand how the military works will go, oh, that sounds legit. That seems no, it's complete nonsense. You know, but he portrays himself as this kind of alpha male. You know, he's like, and he's got this group of people who maybe have attachment issues. You know, like people who have a distrust of authority or so on. You know, and they live through him vicariously because they'd love to have done these things, they'd love to have been soldiers, but they couldn't for whatever reason. So they hold him up as like this alpha, the epitome of the alpha male, who's like a top secret clearance in the army, like, you know, super soldier James Bond stuff. You know,
yeah,
and it's ridiculous. But because of the way the US lionizes the military, he's now arguing for a position of like almost unassailable authority. No matter what he says, they'll defend him, because who the hell are you to question him? He was in the army, he went to war, and blah blah blah. You know, I said, well, so did thousands of us.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm fortunately in the same boat. I was lucky enough to serve, and I know exactly where you're coming from. It almost sounds like an appeal to it. Obviously, it would be very difficult to comment without speaking to him really in depth and getting into the weeds with him. But it sounds very much like someone's coveting there. Somebody's almost got feelings of, I would suggest that just from what you've said, there's feelings of inadequacy, that somebody's looking to build themselves up.
Yeah, I think
he's certainly doing that.
I think maybe he was undoubtedly military. There's no question about that, right? But it's the exaggeration of his service. I mean, you'll have heard the term Walton bloater.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an absolute bloater. There's no two ways about that, you know. But I think he had a low rank as I don't know what the American equivalent of NCO is, maybe like a corporal or something.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have that position anymore. You know, that of respect and authority. Not as him as a person, but of his position. You know, he's used to having people do what he says. You know, he could go out into town in his uniform and people will, oh, thank you for your service, you know, or you're such a great guy. And I think he's found a ready audience of quite gullible people that will give him that feeling of authority and relevance. Because, like most of us, you know, we're all sort of veering towards middle age, you know, and some people don't deal with being irrelevant very well. And I think he's one of them.
Yeah, Paul, I don't know if you're aware of Ranty and Brandon necessarily, but Ranty had a channel, Flat Earth channel. He got about 5,000 subscribers, and then he decided to give it all away, and he gave it to Brandon. So Brandon's taking it from now. I've got a video I want to show, which sort of gives a good example of their thought processes, and what Tusk is saying about he surrounds himself with, well, I don't know what you call them, people who suck up to him, basically.
Yeah.
And they're definitely omega males. They're not. I'll leave you to make your own assessment. So you're the mental health professional, but
these are people. The people he surrounds himself are the ones that go, you know, airsofting and paintballing.
Oh.
You know, the ones, you know, that run around in SAS uniforms and everything. You know, and he's like, you know.
So let's have a look at the
ones.
Yeah. Well,
this is a live stream. This is a live stream from a couple of days ago, and it obviously it goes on for 2.5 hours, well, nearly 3 hours. But I just want to play a bit, and then we'll skip. And what they're trying to do is, how can you do a straight line and be convinced it's a straight line without presupposing a globe or a flat plane?
Yeah.
And their thought processes are just very revealing. So let's just have a watch for a bit, and then we'll talk.
So what we got here is the idea of making those molds out of cement or whatever it was. So the brown line is the trench that we would dig. The gray line here is the mold that we'd make, concrete, whatever material it would have been, and then the water on top. And that was like what was that, Jeremy's idea, or whose idea was that?
It was mine, but I have to give some credit to Brandon, kind of. Not really.
Yeah, so that was like the first idea that we had, and I wanted to like show it here, or my understanding of what I thought you guys meant with that test. So there's like a view from above of those molds. They appear or look straight, and if you like rotate them towards each other, the gaps would be the same on each end there. But on a curved surface, you would get something looking like this.
That's if it's one solid piece. If it's one solid piece, yeah.
It just depends on which way you rotate them, but you either get this shape or then this kind of shape here.
Yep, you got it. It's that simple. Exactly.
Yeah. So, and both sides agreed that if we could do this, it would work. But the hard part about it is just actually getting this done, and the difficulty of actually physically rotating these molds here.
Yeah, when you think about it in your brain, you're like, yeah, we can take a trench and pour some concrete in there and then flip it over. But what my problem was, I had to think about how actually long even a mile was, or 2 miles. You're talking about like 10 city blocks for a mile, flipping something on its side. And in a mile, we would want to do more. So yeah, the logistics are just insane.
No, I think I'll stop it there. Let's just bring some faces back. Yeah, so they put their minds to this problem. Yeah, it's and you just see that they have no idea what they're talking about, but they're going to play on anyway. And you know, to some extent, that's good. You've got to have courage when you're trying to solve problems. But I don't know why they needed to rotate it. I haven't figured that out. What they're basically trying to do is build a trench long enough so that they could observe curvature if there is some. And they're saying they want to build a concrete trench that's a mile long at least, so they can see 8 inches, I guess, and then fill it with water so that they're sure that the surface is level. And this whole live stream just goes on about this. And so I think do you know which one's Brandon, Paul?
Yes, yeah. I was getting it.
Yeah, and you can hear the other ones and the way their minds work as well. It's quite fascinating to watch, and the fact that they even think this is possible. But they totally reject the fact that it's already been done with the Hadron Collider, I think it is.
Yes.
Where it had to take into account the curvature of the Earth because they needed a straight line for the laser. Otherwise, the laser would hit the walls of the tunnel. So it's already been shown that the Earth is curved in that just by that, but they just refuse to accept it. They want to do it for themselves. Oh, okay, well, fair enough, but you've got to apply some real sense to it rather than just thinking, oh, I'm going to dig a trench a mile long and fill it with water. First of all, we've got canals that long, so you don't need to build one. And
we could always, why do it yourself when you can just look at what somebody who knows what they're doing has already done?
Well, that is exactly right. It's someone who knows what they're doing has already done. And yet they have this thing. If you haven't done it yourself, then you can't possibly know it. Yeah. That's one of their delusions. And that's not an opinion. That's definitely one of their delusions.
That's 100% fact. Oh, if you don't do it yourself, it's not happened.
It's just amazing that they even twist themselves into this. They put all these rules on themselves because they think they're putting the rules on people arguing from the scientific point of view. And so, but they realize they've got to put them on themselves as well, and they trap themselves into this way of thinking, which means they've got to come up with increasingly creative solutions, which have no basis whatsoever. Because they put all these other rules, it keeps science away, you know.
Yeah, it's almost like they think like children. It's like we'll dig this trench a mile long, we'll fill it with concrete, and then we'll flip it out and we'll see if the concrete's curved. But well, what Jesus, just I said the sheer logistical nightmare of doing a thing like that doesn't occur to them. But because they can't do it, it can't be done.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's like-
therefore, anybody that does has said, "Oh, canals are built flat and level." Well, no, they're not. They're built with the curvature of the earth into account. So
Yeah.
they're not the base of a canal is not level; it's curved. But yeah, if you took the water out, the water would be flat. But then they'd have to freeze the water and lift the water out like a mile section of frozen water and check it for cover. I hate.
Well,
to
later
use
on
the
they
word-
suggest that.
Yeah, I don't like to use the word insane, but they're insane. It's a madness that's taken them. They
Well,
live
they
in this strange little world where it's almost a fantasy world they live in.
Well, it is. Yeah, they don't know enough to know that they don't know enough. It's Dunning-Kruger incarnate.
Yeah, it's top left of the scale, isn't it?
Yes. Well, they're hovering above Mount Stupid. They're not even on Mount Stupid. And they stay. That's the problem. The whole point of Dunning-Kruger is you get more experience and knowledge and you move down the curve, and then eventually you move up it as you become an expert. But they never do that.
No.
But I did comment in this live stream, and I'm encouraged they're actually trying to think through it, which is more than what most flips do. They just assume it's not possible or it's easy. Like Daniel Pratt said that we could measure the distance over a 50-meter swimming pool, see if there's any curvature there. Well, no, that's not possible. Any curvature that's there would be the water would never be that flat that we could measure the curvature. And I don't think we got instruments that sensitive anyway.
I commented on that video, the swimming pool. I said, you do realise that the person that built the swimming pool did it with a level to make sure that it's flat and not curved. 50 meters, it's been built up. Have you ever seen foundations and piles? How you build a flat surface on a curved surface? And he went ballistic.
Well, he always does.
Well, more than usual. He completely changed subject and started shouting that I said he was a Trump supporter and everything. So I said nothing of the sort. Talking about a swimming pool. But he is definitely prone to bouts of anger.
Well, we're going to have a look at him a bit later. If we we're already an hour in. I'm hoping to go for 2 hours, but we'll see how we go. I've got to feed the corgis at some point. So
is that a euphemism?
No, the corgis need to be fed. I feed them in the morning. So, to be honest, I think that they go on like this for the next 3 hours. So I'm not sure that I was going to. Let's just do a jump ahead and just a random spot and see what they say.
And it goes anywhere you put it in the water.
How are you going to keep it straight if it follows the level of the water?
It doesn't follow the level of the water. It's
Yes, it does.
Neutrally buoyant.
Yes, and it's
neutrally
neutrally buoyant at the same point in the water everywhere. So it's going to follow that shape of the water, curved or flat.
I don't think you understand.
So your test fails.
I don't think you understand what neutrally buoyant is.
I just explained how it doesn't work because it's going to follow.
You think that there's going to be that? You think that's going to be that sensitive in that water where the neutral buoyant will naturally stay at that exact density within that water that it would curve if
Brandon's all over it.
Come on, man.
That's the whole point. It's going to stay at that level and follow the shape of the
ridiculous.
water.
That's ridiculous, bro.
No, actually it isn't.
It is.
How can you not understand that?
I do.
Because you're not assuming. No, hold on. You're not assuming it's flat
you're
or
a fucking
curved.
retard, dude. You're not understanding.
No, Brian.
The little bit of pressure we're going to put on that line to try to pull it tight is going to overcome that, whatever that force is you're talking about that's going to keep it at that
How are you
exact
going
density
to
profile.
have it exactly straight? How are you going to have the piece of string in a straight line?
Ed, what if it floats, buddy? What if the line floats and we can't sink
It's
it?
approximately.
We do whatever we can, but we just can't sink it.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to get it so...
right?
Hold on. We're going to get it neutral buoyant. But like I said, we're going to take a water sample we're going to use, and we're going to clip a few pieces off the line and set them in our tank so that over time...
But as soon as you go any deeper, you're going to have a different density.
Sorry.
Brandon's got it.
No, it's a ridiculous thing to say that that's going to happen, though, Ruth.
The
We're
line
gonna
up,
set 'em in the
Johnny,
water. We're gonna
Johnny,
set these.
bro.
You're just
Jesus
saying
Christ.
it's ridiculous. You're not explaining why.
Yeah, I did.
I'm gonna
already
explain
explained
why to you right now.
No, and I debunked it, so
No, you didn't.
now it's your turn again.
Hold on. Just hold on a second, guys. Let's not get fucking crazy. We're going to snip the couple pieces of our line off, get a test sample of the water we're using. We can do this multiple
Yeah,
times.
you
We
said
can
that
do-
5 times, and it's gonna
Okay,
stay
we can do-
neutrally buoyant at the same level in the water, the same depth
No, it won't.
everywhere. So
We're going to put the
and
line
it's
in the
gonna
water.
follow.
If you
that
can
means-
shut up for a minute, I
that
would
means it's
explain
gonna
it, but
follow
I
the
guess you
shape
can't.
of the water.
Ed, don't
Earth or flat.
blow the hangout up. Don't blow the hangout up.
Yeah, that sounds wrong.
Seriously.
I think we'll pause it there. I think we got the idea. They're furiously arguing about stupidity, basically.
This fishing line test they're talking about, it's Brian, what's his name? I've forgotten his name, Brian something. He was talking about it on Jose's one day, where his plan is to take a piece of fishing line 3 miles long and pull it taut across a lake, and then check the bend in the line essentially. If it's the same at point A and point B, it means the Earth's flat. But if you're going to tie a piece of fishing line on a 5-foot pole, 5 foot up at point A and a 5 foot up in point B, of course it's going to be the same level. That's where you tied it. How can it be anything but? And you're never going to get a piece of line you can stretch 3 miles taut. Again, they've got no sense of scale. I don't think he understands how.
Or the fact that fishing line will weigh something so it'll sag in the fucking middle.
It'll sag in the middle. But what his plan
Braid,
was,
which doesn't stretch much, but all fishing lines will stretch to some extent.
well,
Yeah.
what his idea was there, he's been talking about this for months, is to let the line sink in the middle to a depth of around 3 feet or so, and then somehow calculate where it sits in the water with regards to what would be a straight line over 3 miles. But he's so far refused, or he's unable to describe the mechanics of that and how he would work out. I mean, the weight of 3 miles of line is going to be a few pounds anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be heavy. I mean, I tried explaining this to him before. Bob the science guy went out into his backyard and pulled a piece of fishing line 50 feet and it had a sag in it.
Shock.
You know, but he
Well,
went
anyone who's ever been fishing would tell
Yeah.
you that the line
Well,
sags.
Yeah. He went out into the street he lives on. It took him about 2 hours to do this. He disrupted the workmen in the street and everything. Right. And he tied a piece of fishing line to his fence post, I think, and then claimed he'd pulled it 3, 5, then 800 feet. Refused to show us any footage beyond some bloody 90s mobile phone camera footage of him annoying workmen in the street, and claimed that was proof. But everybody who's tried to explain to him just the simple logistics of it, you won't get a piece of anything you can pull taut over 3 miles. Rope, wire, anything. It's not
Concrete.
going to happen. Yeah, anything. Yeah, the weight of it alone.
And the stretch, it stretches. So everything stretches. So even Concorde stretched 4 inches every time it flew. So he actually went to explain that later on. They all said what an idiot he is. It's always funny when idiots call other idiots idiots, but and of course that's all my opinion. But yes,
Factual, but it's opinion.
Well, I think it's factual, but that's my opinion that it's factual. So,
I think
I want to move. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Carry on.
Carry on.
No, you go, mate. Go.
I think this speaks to something that was mentioned earlier. It's about a kind of, they try and intellectualize things, and but they don't have the capacity, they don't have the education. So while they're trying to intellectualize what's clearly nonsense, they say, "Oh, you don't understand. You're too stupid. You don't understand." But whenever you try to explain it to them, they reject it completely out of hand, because there's a very, very strong anti-intellectual movement within that conspiracy circle. Anybody who's been to university has been brainwashed, and they can reject anything you say out of hand.
You by questioning what their by questioning their thought processes, you're questioning their defense mechanism. You're questioning the defense mechanism, their belief, their position within this imaginary hierarchy within that group, as it were. So if you've got a group of flat earthers like you've got there, if you question what they're saying, you're challenging their position and their reputation within their social circle. So they're going to vehemently deny it to maintain their position. I did notice a couple of times a couple of times in that last clip, when somebody was being called out and saying, and the people were saying, no, you're being stupid. How many times did somebody say, and I don't know who it was, but said, you get it, don't you, Brandon? Brandon, do you get it? You understand it, don't you? Effectively appealing to him to back him up.
Yeah, that's because he's the alpha.
Yeah, he's on a pedestal there.
Yeah,
he's absolutely on his pedestal there. After they're almost looking for his approval.
Yeah, so when Ranty gave up that stream, they couldn't do it because he said he got a new job. And they said, oh, this is a guy, I really trust him. He was a really good guy. You all know him. You know, the one and only Brandon Toy, you know. And his viewership kind of went up about 20% because, oh my God, Brandon Toy is like, you know, can we get his autograph? You know, but it becomes obvious the more you listen to Brandon, he's got absolutely no idea what he's talking about. But as I said earlier on, because he's ex-military and he's done all these things, you can't question him.
Yeah, and
even though they know what he's saying is utter bollocks, but they can't question him because that's them out of the group. You know, they're not part of that inner circle anymore.
Yeah, he's. It's interesting though. His the subs haven't really dropped, but the views have. He only gets like 40 or so, at least the last couple I've seen. I haven't been studying him, but certainly the views of each of his live streams have been dropping from when it was Ranty's time. So
they had a little peak because it was new, it was a novelty. Yeah. But then it's just the same people he has on over and over again talking the same nonsense.
Yeah, and I've been saying Brandon's turned it into an idiots convention where idiots get together, pat themselves on the back about what idiots they are, and that's my opinion of it. And every time I see his live stream, like you saw there, that was 3 hours of that. And it's exactly what I'm talking about, you know?
That's a difficult watch.
Yeah. It's the way they pile on, which makes it difficult for me to watch, is, you know, if like someone says, oh no, you can't do that, concrete doesn't behave that way. Someone will say, yes, it does. Now the other two people have got no idea about the properties of concrete whatsoever. And you instantly jump in and go, yeah, you don't know anything, you're an idiot. You know, they're frantically Googling, you know, to see, you know, concrete, what's that for, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know,
constituent elements of concrete.
Yeah.
They'll always resort to the dictionary rather than their own understanding of it, you know? They're not...
It doesn't matter what you're saying, it doesn't matter how stupid what you say is, there has to be consensus. So they'll all agree with you. Whether they know something, some of them obviously know what Brandon's just said is completely wrong. But for the greater good, you know,
but the implications of disagreeing are way too high, aren't they? You're never gonna, you're never gonna throw yourself on your own sword.
No, well, if you look at what happened on with Austin Whitsitt and Nathan Oakley,
that was I still find that so funny. So
that's what happens when you disagree with one of the leading lights in the movement. You know?
Especially one that's a bigger arsehole.
Yeah, it's harder to find a bigger arsehole than Nathan Oakley, but you know,
well, Austin Whitsitt's a pretty big arsehole, but yeah, Oakley's much bigger.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think it's time to move on to another conspiracy nutter. Let me just share the screen. Audio. All right, and this I was going to say Jim Hogan, it's probably not correct. Let's see what he has to say.
Helium.
Oh, this is from Everett Anderson, this video. It was about Nathan's bad year. So subscribe to Everett Anderson if you do.
Guys, I'm getting like a lot of messages. We didn't block anyone from the official Flat Earth and Globe discussion. We got 140,000 members in there learning the truth. The group was just deleted a few minutes ago. So I'm getting all kinds of people messaging me saying, why am I banned? Why am I banned? Nobody's banned. The group disappeared. So after 4 years, it was a good run, guys. I was last on the way here. I've been blocked. I was blocked when we went to Raleigh. I was blocked when we went to Denver. I was blocked when we went to Dallas. I couldn't live stream. I couldn't be in the group. And I was laughing on the way here. And I was like, man, I'm not blocked. I can live stream. And the group disappeared. So funny how that works out. I just want to let you guys know that's what happened. So thanks, Nathan. Good to see you, Nathan.
Just to stop it there, he's wearing it as a badge of honor that he got deleted.
Yeah. It's almost a reverse psychology, isn't it? It's almost like, so for him, it getting deleted will almost, he'll own that, and he'll own that from and try and reinvent the perspective. So to say, well, it got deleted because I'm challenging authority. I'm holding, you know, the people in power, I'm holding them to account. They're scared of me, so they deleted it. It'll almost try and reverse psychology that situation and reverse engineer it as though he's achieved something amazing.
When in reality, he got deleted because he spreads misinformation like a bloody idiot.
Yeah, he's a tit.
Yeah, it's definitely that rationalization, isn't it? It's like, yeah. I got too close to the truth, so they silenced me. Just open just open a new page like you did. You know, no one's trying to silence you. You've still got access to the platform. But as I say, he's had to pare it down, you know, 80% because he realised that, I think he knew anyway, that of his 40,000 subscribers, you know, do you know how he got his subscribers to that level? Is like when people joined his group, he asked them or demanded their Facebook passwords and then added all their friends without their knowledge. So maybe he had maybe 50 followers originally, but each of those 50 followers had 200 friends. So
yes, he lives in a fantasy world.
Yeah, that gave him 10,000 straight away, and that's what he did. He demanded everybody hand over their passwords and their information for their social media accounts.
There's no words for that, is there? Just no words.
Hand over their passwords and their information for their social media accounts. Oh, I can hear myself on stream.
Hang on. No, I think that was me. Paul, are you still there?
I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had the stream running in the background and I didn't realize it. And people keep asking me what watch hours am I up to now, so I'm just trying to find out. Unfortunately, it's usually a bit behind on. Yeah, it's just saying 3,903 public watch hours, but I'm pretty sure it's more than that right now. Anyway, let's get back to Nathan.
Chlorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon.
And also this sort of juggling and reciting the periodic table and whatever and counting and stuff like that, he thinks that means he knows something. It's an achievement.
It's a public. It's almost making a public statement, isn't it? Look how intelligent I am. Look how skilled I am. I can not only juggle, but I can juggle and I can recite the periodic table like anyone gives a shit.
Well, I think it's more that he's doing it because I can do things that you can't do. So therefore, you should listen
absolutely. To me. Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, let's listen to what he has to say.
Stay right there, guys.
Yes, I can see that.
12 o'clock, camera ready in Malibu. 12 to 3 p.m. Ben and Blake present evidence for a round Earth. That never happened. So from day one, the first hour of filming, everything I was planning on happening didn't happen.
Now, either they lied to me or they didn't. And either way, it's funny as hell, in my opinion. They have nothing. They have nothing. The Globers have nothing. They're so boring and redundant. So either people figured out it's flat, which happens all the time, or they lied to me, which happens all the time.
Stuff like this, why people quit flat Earth. You know?
Phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon, potassium, calcium, creatine, titanium, vanadium, chromium.
Yeah, just in case you don't know, Paul, this is a video that Nathan put out. Well, the crying bit was after Reckless Ben punked him.
Yes.
Did you see that? With the
yeah.
suits and things?
Oh, I loved it. Every second of it. I loved it way more than I should have done.
Yes, well, I think everyone did. But this reaction shows his thought processes about it. He's basically trying to rationalize it, saying, well, it's flat Earth. That's the way it works, you know? Anyway, let's keep going.
Manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc.
Nathan Thompson's YouTube channel is nowhere to be seen.
Lovely.
100. I still can't catch it. Oh, that kills it. I'm done. I'm done.
All right, I'll stop there. Again, Everett Anderson, make sure you subscribe to him if you haven't already. I'd like to see him get over 1,000. He puts out a video almost every day, and he really gives it. Well, he lets the flat earthers kill themselves, really. And yeah, I'm not playing the end because he tends to use copyrighted music, and I've had problems playing his videos before. So, but he has good content. So make sure you subscribe to Everett Anderson. So, Paul, what do you think about all that?
Where to start? Absolutely, where to start with this guy. There are so many things going on with this guy. So many. Insofar as, like you correctly pointed out, there's so much rationalization there. I'm not going to call it intellectualization because he's not pulling it off, is he? He hasn't got the knowledge behind it, but he just seems to. He projects. He wants to project this sort of image that he's intellectual, that he's got abilities. He can juggle. He can recite the periodic table at the same time. Therefore, I am somebody who can be listened to. You should listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. And then as things come crashing down, he just absolutely, he just denies it's even happening. He tries to rationalize it in certain parts. Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the list that from the beginning, you can just start ticking them off. You can just start.
You want me to do that?
We can.
Yep, hang on. I'll just get it up.
We'll play Flat Earth Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that video there, he's just trying to re-establish himself as that authority figure again. Yeah, he got made to look a fool. But look, I can hit a hammer on a golf ball and say scientific words. You know, it's...
Yeah.
I can remember things.
Yeah, he's probably got it written in front of him.
He can... He's... I mean... So, I mean, repression. Exactly. So, I mean, obviously people can go through this anyway, and they'll work it out. It's easy enough, isn't it? But he's positively reframing what's happened in part of it as well. So by sort of by sort of reframing and reimagining what's happened and saying with reference to the groups, he's sort of trying to change the path and change the public perception of what's happened, and a lot of it is behind that. There's a lot of that behind what he's doing, is reframing people's perceptions of him. So, like I say, by the juggling, by the reciting of the periodic table, he's just trying to reimagine and reinvent himself in people's opinions so he can maintain his position within that community as being almost idolized.
So, yeah, you're saying ticking them off. Any you wouldn't tick off from the list?
Not really. Not really. I don't think I didn't see a great deal of reaction formation there, because I genuinely believe he literally cognitively switches around everything that's happening. So he doesn't try to deny anything. He accepts it's happening. He accepts that he's been pranked, but then he tries to positively reframe it. So he almost tries to rationalize it. Well, actually, if I was pranked, it doesn't matter, because my point's still the same. I still come out on top, which is in itself a form. It's a rationalization lead into a denial,
which is bizarre, because the fact that it happened showed that it was happened because to show how ridiculous his point was.
Yeah, absolutely. But he wouldn't get that. He because to accept his points are ridiculous would be accepting that he's talking shit. So he can't do that. So it's almost that subconscious switch into, this has happened, I've now got to account for it. Let's rationalize it. Let's reframe exactly what's been going on and say it's either option A or option B. Well, I don't think it's option A, so therefore it must be B. And if it's B, well, actually, that's okay for me anyway, because I still come out on top. Oh, and guess what? I can still juggle. I can still recite the periodic table. I'm still the dog's bollocks. Keep me at the top of the tree, everyone.
Well, if you thought that was stupid, let's have a look at the next one, because I think this guy takes it to the next level.
If it is who I think it is, he disturbs me.
There he is.
It's exactly who I think it is.
Yes, he's had 2 channels deleted, and he's got 2 strikes on his current channel. This is from his backup channel. That in itself tells you something. But yes, on with the stupid.
Let's think about this. It's important. Flat Earth is dangerous enough. Us crazy flat earthers that are infecting the minds of everyone across the flat plane.
Yes, you are.
You're so dangerous. They have to hold congressional hearings to demand that YouTube censor us. If NASA is aware of that and refuses to act when they are funded by United States citizen taxpayer dollars, and it's those very citizens that are supposedly going crazy, suddenly thinking the Earth is flat, and NASA is a corporation started by a bunch of Nazis that are lying to us, then how is NASA not complicit in allowing this lunacy, this flat Earth craziness to continue by not doing real science and proving the globe?
I'll just stop it there. He seems to have twisted himself into a whole lot of double negatives there. How is NASA not complicit in not spreading flat Earth? I think he said. It was very confusing.
He scares me.
Danny makes sometimes up to like a dozen videos a day.
Yeah.
Where he just rants into the camera. And whenever I don't think he's even aware that he contradicts himself frequently.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter though. It's that religious zeal he's got. You know, he's a light bringer. He's like the Messiah trying to wake up the sheeple. You know,
this is why I actually tried to because you can't actually comment on his videos, can you?
No, usually not.
No, and I did see Irish Demon repost because there was a bit of a backwards and forwards between the two for a couple of weeks, wasn't there? And I tried to I put a comment on there because I absolutely know 100% he will have read the comment. And I tried to put a comment to him because it was the only way I could get in touch with him. And I was asking him to get in touch with, genuinely get in touch with a psychiatric or a psychological professional. He genuinely, there are elements about his presentation that really do concern me.
Yeah.
And really concerns me that he's got kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, well, there was a video, he's taken it down now, where he's got 2 kids and he had them in front of a blackboard you know, berating them. You know, don't believe your teacher. The earth is flat. The Bible's the only book you need. You know, and a lot of people were rightly upset by that. Said that's almost child abuse. You know, that's just they're telling your kids to go into school that day and call their teacher a liar in front of the whole class. You know, you can't do that to your children. You know.
Yeah. I'm sure he loves his children as a human being, but it's scary that with his point of view, and those children getting indoctrinated with all this rubbish, you know. Let's watch the rest of this. There's only 50 seconds because I want to get his face off the screen.
You can claim it's proven all you want. It's obviously not proof enough because flat Earth continues. So, are you complicit in allowing flat Earth to continue infecting the world, endangering the world, as you have your mainstream media desperately trying to convince people of? Then why don't you put an end to it, NASA? Why don't you provide irrefutable proof of the globe and end it now? Oh, that's right, because you can't.
He's just batshit crazy. You can see it in his eyes. And of course, we have provided that proof. He just won't accept anything that's given, you know.
There's a massive element every time I see him. There's an element of paranoia, absolute paranoia. So everything's a conspiracy, not just one thing. Everything that government tell you, everything that NASA tell you, everything that science tells you, everything that medicine tells you. It's all a conspiracy, and to the point where, and this is why I urged him to go and see somebody, because that level of paranoia can actually lead people psychologically down really, really dark, dangerous paths, especially when, you know, that to that degree and to that extreme. And there's a public safety issue there. There's a personal safety issue there. He's got family, he's got kids. And, you know, I wouldn't, as a human being, ever want to see somebody in a position that can be changed not get that help when it is so obviously and readily available. But he's absolutely obsessional. He really is obsessional. Even when, like you say, it's not just, you know, he can post 2, 3, 4, 5 videos a day. He can be self-contradictory in what he's saying because his thought processes actually cognitively aren't constructed. So it's a conspiracy. I don't know why it's a conspiracy, but it's a conspiracy. And I'm going to tell the world it's a conspiracy. But I don't know how, and I don't know why. But I'm going to keep coming on. I'm going to keep telling you because I need to ram it down your throats. It's obsessional, and it's paranoid, obsessional, concerning. And, you know, obviously, I think it's just potentially dangerous.
It's telling where he leaves the pauses when he's speaking. It's like when you're dealing with a drunk or an alcoholic.
Yeah.
They'll talk to you and then they'll stop talking and give you that look. You know, that intense look where they're waiting for your reaction. And if you say the wrong thing, they're going to swing for you. You know, and that's, I mean, you haven't met me before, I say I'm ex-forces and I attend a PTSD group for soldiers suffering from combat stress, and I meet people like Daniel Pratt frequently, as I'm sure you have yourself in the line of your profession, and we get them a lot, you know, where they don't have a structured cognitive system anymore. It's flight of thought, racing thoughts. They just say whatever comes to their mind.
Yeah, you can see that,
and
yeah,
you can see, and he goes, and he says, "Oh, why is this happening?" And he does that big deep breath and leans back like he said something really profound, when in fact he's lost. He's forgotten what he was saying. You know, it's like, you know, just before you fall asleep, you have that really intense dream, and you snap out of it, and you can't remember a single bit of it. That's what that's what I see when he's talking. You know, someone who's lost in a wee fantasy world, then suddenly they snap out of it, and he's got no idea what he's just said.
And that's what concerns me, to be truthful. And obviously, I would never in a million years try and I would never try and offer opinion or diagnosis over somebody I've never met or properly assessed. But there's enough there. There's enough there for me to say that presentation is concerning, and I would urge somebody to just speak to somebody, get that assessment, because, like you say, there's enough of a cognitive break there that the whole sort of ordered cognitive process doesn't exist. It's just not there, and whether that's overwhelmed cognitively or that's overwhelmed by his obsession or the paranoia, or there's other elements that we can't see, that we don't know about going on, but there's something breaking that cognitive process that does concern me, especially as the man's got a family, especially as he lives somewhere, but he's going to have neighbors, he's going to have a local community that he's in, and obviously his own health and well-being.
Yeah, he's relatively. He looks a lot older than he is. I think he's only in his mid-40s.
What?
Yeah, he's about 46. Yeah, he's not bad. I think his profession, he gave it as a welder fabricator. I think that's what he does, and I think like a lot of men of that profession and those manual professions, he's been made obsolete by technology. They don't need him anymore. He's lost,
Which again would feed into the defense mechanisms that we spoke about before.
Yeah.
If you've got a sort of, and obviously I don't know where he's from, but there's quite and I'm not a sociologist, but there's a social trend where people in that sort of industry, it tends to run in the family. So, my dad was an engineer, I'm going to be an engineer. My dad was a mechanic, I'm going to be a mechanic. And it's all he ever knew. It's all he ever, and probably in school, well, it doesn't really matter. I don't need to learn science. I don't need to learn maths. I don't need to learn that, because I know what I'm going to do when I'm older. I know what I do when I'm leaving school. So then, if for some reason, and it is purely speculation, but this could apply to anybody, if that employment is then threatened, that is a massive threat. That's a massive trigger for anxiety. That is a huge threat to your livelihood. It's a huge threat to your way of life, especially if you're married, you've got a home, you've got children, which again can lead people down the defense mechanisms route that we were talking about.
Yeah, so I think what I've got on the screen now, all three of those, Brandon, Thompson, and Pratt, we see all that in those examples as well. They become evangelical. Certainly, Thompson's that, and Pratt. They lose friends and careers that we've been talking about. That they don't really care about the law so much. They're not worrying about the benefits of a functioning society. They're willing to disrupt. In other words, they're adamant they're correct despite all facts against them, and narcissistic, definitely, and convinced they're doing good. That's Thompson. He thinks he's Pratt as well. That's part of the evangelical part of it, I guess. They think they're going out there, they're spreading the good word, and if only you'd listen, the world would be a better place, kind of thing,
Can I? I'll just pop back in a second. I just need to step away. Sorry.
All right then. All right.
Just about on the narcissistic. Sorry. On the narcissistic point. A lot of people say, I see it in the chat on various streams, are saying Daniel Pratt especially, and Nathan Thompson to a lesser degree, because I'm pretty sure he's a con artist. But they are definitely narcissists.
Yeah.
They enjoy the adulation. And like all narcissists, they imagine themselves, being carried aloft, as the hero of the day, the light bringer, the Messiah. But then suddenly that's snatched away from them, and I think it's especially apparent with Pratt. You can see that elation he's got when he's on a high, where he's convinced he's the truth teller, he's going to save us all. And then someone makes a comment to him, says, "Nah, you're full of shit, mate. And here's why." And then that fantasy is broken, and he comes plummeting down, and you can see the rage in him, and it is rage, you know, because as high as he was a moment ago, imagining, you know, he was being, you know, lauded on the news and by people, you know, oh, Daniel, you're so great, you've saved us all from the liars, and then suddenly that's taken away, like a baby who's been denied, you know.
Well, deleting the channel would do that, yeah. So,
yeah,
but he just starts another one, of course.
Yeah, when he's on there,
it's a lesser extent. It's something similar with Brandon, though, although to a lesser extent in terms of the way it plays out at the moment, at least. Because, you know, Brandon got on Alex Jones. He had worldwide attention. So, you know, I'm sure he's trying to regain that to some extent.
Well, yeah, it's like you see it with addicts of all stripe. You know, they're trying to get back to that original feeling the first time. You know, so it takes more and more and more every single time. But they're never ever going to get that feeling again. It's like people, they're feeling down, so they go onto their eBay profile and read all the positive reviews they got, because it makes them, you know, makes them feel good.
Gives them something positive.
It gives them a positive feeling. But then when, like Nathan Thompson there, he had 40,000 people on Facebook all telling him how great he was, and that was snatched away from him.
Actually, most of them weren't saying that, but
well, most of them weren't. But you know, he deleted the ones that were, you know, those ones.
Yeah,
but you know,
he only cared about the number.
Yeah, that level of narcissism where they live, and you know, they're only one step away from breaking through and being, you know, the hero. They're always only one step away, but they keep being defeated by them, the faceless they that are working against them. You know, and like it's difficult to come to terms with your own flaws and faults. I mean, no one wants to do that. So you project and you invent an invisible enemy.
But coming to terms with your own faults and flaws is kind of essential to become an adult, really, a functioning adult anyway.
It's like you said before in the original list, it's that regression. And they don't want to have to take responsibility. Being a responsible adult, having a career and so on, it's difficult. So when you fail, it's much easier to blame somebody else. But you can't blame somebody close to you, because then that can be debunked. So you invent an enemy. You know, this list that, and then that's where you go down that dark road of paranoia where you don't know where to stop. Where everybody's your enemy, everything's a conspiracy. I mean, I see it all the time.
It's all a plot to make you paranoid.
I see it all the time in my counselling group. You know, where someone they're struggling, you know, to deal with just the everyday. They get frustrated. Everything they try to do gets frustrated. Nothing quite works out the way they want to because of their own inability to function as an adult. But they never take responsibility for it. It's always somebody else's fault. You know, and when you try, sorry, go on.
No, you finish, mate.
No, I realised I was waffling.
That's all right. I just want to move on to the next point, I guess. So the end result of them falling into this mindset of a conspiracy mindset, and we're talking a lot about flat Earth, but there's people like I just thought it'd be too much. People like Mark Steele about 5G. He is an absolute nutter, in my opinion. And MC Toon did a video on him recently. I'm not going to play it today, but a guy sort of went in undercover, you might say. He sort of sucked up to Mark Steele just so he could understand him better. And if you've seen that video from MC Toon, you'll see that Mark Steele clearly has no idea what he's talking about, but he'll make shit up. So it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And that's where his information comes from. Yeah. Yes, Ion and Eon, yes.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
So, yeah, Flat Earth gives us plenty of examples, so I didn't want to go down that path as well. Hey, Mr. Sensible's here. Hello, Mr. Sensible. It's good to see you. But, yeah, so to me, the end result is that when they lock themselves into these mindsets, they seek out other people who have the same mindset because, you know, no matter what your mindset is, there's someone else on Earth that has something similar. And So they're retreating to their echo chambers. Look at Nathan Oakley. Look at Brandon. You know, they're clearly echo chambers. They do invite in people from outside, but only to mock them. In the video we played earlier, we had Ruhif was in there as well. He was the one saying to Brandon, "Brandon's got this," because he was trying to encourage Brandon to point out the rubbish. But yeah, they just always mock Ruhif, and Ruhif's really a cool dude. He just says what the truth is and just continues on. But yeah, echo chambers is the point I was making. There's plenty of those. They become dysfunctional people. They lose their jobs. Mark Steele's another example. He just spends his life spreading bullshit, and they become dangerous by believing in every crazy conspiracy that's out there, really, because so many flat earthers are also anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, COVIDiots, and 5G nutters as well. And it just seems to be they're quite happy to believe any old rubbish that comes along. They're not interested in looking for substantiation for any of this. They just think, oh, this is sticking it to the man, so therefore I'm going to support it, regardless of what the truth is. Does that make sense to you, Paul? Or?
The same. A lot of it does. There's this, as I got more into it and sort of started to look into it and research it a bit more, a lot started to uncover with regard to the sort of the sociological side of it, which is something that I'm not personally qualified in, but I've studied bits of sociology. But insofar as sort of society, isolation within society and everything else, which leads to a lower portion of self-esteem. And when people have got these unique ideas, they become isolated from society in some regard. So they'll, like you say, they'll lose relationships, they'll lose friends, they'll lose regular contact with family. And that isolation will drive down self-esteem. When people retreat into the echo chambers, such as Oakley, the self-esteem is automatically raised because they're in a familiar group. They're, in some regards, people like Oakley are idolized in these groups. So their self-esteem is suddenly recovered by just having a presence in an echo chamber. So that presence almost in that echo chamber becomes a primary goal, becomes a primary focus.
They're at the feet of the guru.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't matter. As long as you're in there, you are accepted by the guru. So, if you're Witsit getting slammed, I'm sorry, but if your friend spoke to you like that in a bar, in the way that Oakley spoke to Witsit, how long would you be friends with them? Exactly.
I'd be punching him out.
Exactly. Me too. So you've then got to say to yourself, well, hold on, what's Witsit getting out of this relationship? Because it's fucking toxic. It's absolutely toxic. The only thing that you can be getting from it is functional self-esteem. So that says the self-esteem away from that echo chamber, the self-esteem issues. There surely must be. I can't see any other logical reason for it. But equally, yeah, I agree with everything you've just said. People can, if they get the opportunity, they will retreat into the echo chambers as a result of that lower self-esteem, and it becomes obsessional. It almost becomes a need, which is why does Oakley's channel do a show every day? It's overkill much, because being in the echo chamber, being actually in the echo chamber in the first place serves a purpose. What's that purpose? Makes me feel good.
Yeah,
and he gives that. Sorry.
Sorry, I interrupted. You didn't interrupt.
No. He gives the same nonsense every day, the same questions every day, the same people in there every single day. What purpose does that serve, if nothing else than self-esteem?
It's the mantra. It's repeat the mantra. The same things over again, reinforces, and then they'll go out into this, go wherever they're going, shops or work or whatever, where they'll go, oh, you're all sheeple. I'm the only one that really knows what's going on. And it gives them a sense of importance.
Yeah.
So they can go into a room full of 30 people at a party or work or whatever, and look down on everybody and go, oh, you're just going around, you like cattle, you know, doing your master's bidding, you know, but I'm special. I have secret knowledge, things that you don't know, you know, and that gives them a sense of, it's isolating, but it gives them a sense of false sense of self-worth, you know, because the knowledge is worthless. It's not knowledge, it's false. But
absolutely. Yeah.
It gives them that idea that they've got something that you don't, you know. And I think it's dangerous, but because the more you go into this, the conspiracy mindset, you find there's an awful lot of crossover between UFO believers, flat earthers, 5G, and the far right. There's a massive crossover. You know,
yeah.
No matter what the conspiracy, you can always trace it back to the Jews. Every single time. It's the Illuminati, you know, the Rothschilds, the rich Jew bankers control the world. No matter what it is, it's
the
always
nameless
there.
they.
Yeah, it's always they, you know. Be it.
So I've got a question from the chat. I'd like you guys to answer for us from John Rapp. How much does low intelligence factor into the mental health issues that we're discussing today?
It's a really good question. So part of the work that I did, and I'm hoping to speak to somebody more in tune with in a sociology background. But so looking through the flat Earth groups on social media, Facebook's fantastic because people will join these flat Earth groups and they won't hide the profile, and you'll get an approximate location. And from that, you can see there seems to be clusters of areas that people come from that have flat Earth beliefs. So there'll be areas that are seemingly sort of lower on the educational system. So they'll have, I don't want to say a dysfunctional educational system because some of them aren't, but sort of a poorer educational standard in those areas, or they'll have a higher element of religion. Intelligence is a difficult one to define anyway, because how do you define intelligence? Whereas maybe I would go for education. Low education definitely factors into the way people process their emotional responses to anxious situations. And if those emotional responses to that anxiety isn't right, the defense mechanism goes in the wrong direction, leading you down a conspiracy theory route as a method of coping strategy.
What do you think, Tusk?
I said, yeah, you seem to more or less the same. You seem to see these clusters of almost exclusively white middle-aged men with no further education, no professional qualifications, who live in very deeply religious areas, and when faced with trauma or a challenge to their perception of themselves, they go the wrong direction. They go into conspiracy or the religious texts, and that's not, you're not going to find answers there. And there's that anti-intellectualism, where they don't understand it, therefore it's obfuscation, it's bullshit thrown up by them to hide the truth.
Yeah.
What does a farmer from Illinois need with, quadratic equations? No such thing. Well, it's garbage to him, and he'll look down on anybody who does have that qualification as being an idiot because you've been indoctrinated and so on and so on. So they're not necessarily unintelligent. I don't think they have the intellectual tools to deal with complex emotions.
I think you're right. I think the majority that you see, if you look around on social media, if you look around on Facebook, if you look around on Twitter, and people who are associating and commenting on conspiracy theories, that they're very generic people. Whereas if you look at the people who are forefront of all this nonsense, so if you look at your Nathan Oakleys, if you look at your, I don't want to say Thompson because I don't agree with that one, but there's always a statistical outlier. But, your Bob Nodells, people like that, they're not unintelligent. They're absolutely not. So there are those who end up through having a modicum of intelligence and sort of misapplying that intelligence and hitting top left on the Dunning-Kruger, who end up at the top of this this conspiracy theory hierarchy, as it were, and then people of a lesser education maybe who are just following on, calling everyone else sheeple whilst doing exactly that.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I was actually going to be a dissenting voice, but I think Tusk summed it up very well. I think some of them are quite intelligent in terms of IQ level, you might say. Most of them don't have a good education, and some of them do. I mean, Riley claims to have a law degree, although there's some doubt on that from evidence I've seen. But the way he goes about himself, he really is dumb as fuck. I usually don't want to swear on this channel, but that's the way he comes across. Sorry, Tusk,
I do actually have a law degree. I wouldn't hire him to write a will.
So
well, apparently no one
got
else
a law
does.
degree too.
Where did you go?
It's a law degree loving.
I'm the only one with a science degree. I'm the only real world person. No,
I fell into law completely by accident. You know, I started out as a chef, then I got fed up working in kitchens. I went to college to study music, and part of that was contract law to make sure you don't get robbed and ripped off. And I found I had an aptitude for law, so I went, okay, finished my diploma in music, then I went and did my law degree. And I was like, how the hell did I end up here? You know?
I've got a mate who's a QC. People in America, I'm not sure what the equivalent is. Queen's Counsel is like the top lawyer you can be without being a judge. But he started life as a mechanic, and he was absolutely a brilliant mechanic. I still try and get him to do things on my cars, but he's more interested in the law stuff because that's rather busy. But he basically failed school because he just wasn't interested. So he got out into the world, bought half a mechanic's shop, did really well at that, and then got an interest in the law and went all the way to QC very, very quickly. And he's one of the most sought after lawyers in Brisbane as a result. And yeah, it seems to be it's just because you're a mechanic or a chef or whatever, it doesn't mean you can't go on to do better things. I guess, I guess that comes back to the point I was trying to make, is that some of these guys aren't idiots in the psychological sense, but they don't, as Tusk said, they don't really have the tools to deal with it or to think rationally. Some of it's just experience in that regard. I've noticed, and I'm not disparaging artists, I'm just saying that I come from a scientific background, which I've applied in the business world. Artists don't. So they don't have the same way of thinking about the world in the same way. And when I hear an artist trying to analyze something about physics or something like that, you can see that they have no idea what they're talking about. And flips are very much like that. Not,
yeah,
God, I've just called artists flips. Damn, sorry, artists.
No, as I say, quite a lot of them, from what the main ones I've spoken to over the last few years, tend to be quite skilled in manual labour, but they have no intellectual, I would say no intellectual abilities. They've never furthered it. You know, they're a very good welder or whatever it is they are, but that's it. They lack imagination. They lack critical thinking skills, more importantly.
Just on another thing, Tusk, did you realise you've got 100 subscribers?
I know. I keep saying to people,
congratulations, mate.
To my channel. No, it's not. I was actually looking for a way I could kick people off.
I just put your link in the chat.
Thanks very much. I used to have a guitar channel years ago, which is actually how I got into all of this in the first place. There was a massive argument going on in the guitar community about, does the wood of a solid body electric guitar affect the tone of the guitar when it's plugged in? No, of course it doesn't. Right? But then that's the first time I really encountered that magical thinking and the anger that people will display when you challenge their belief, where it's not based in logic, it's an emotional response. You know, I've spent £4,000 on this guitar because it's got this magical tone wood. No, it's the medium to hold the magnets. It does, you know, it just looks pretty, but that's all it does, you know. And then you get that emotional response. Oh, what the hell do you know? You're a guitar builder, blah 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 blah. You know, and that sort of took me down this rabbit hole of magical thinking and conspiracy theory. Well, conspiracy theories. It's how I kind of ended up here eventually. But yeah, a lot of those subs are hangovers from 3 or 4 years ago. People just haven't got round to unsubbing yet.
I'm a bit confused. Mr. Sensible said that I was wrong. Riley is a tool. I thought I said he was dumb as fuck. So are you saying he's not dumb as fuck? I don't get to swear very often on this. So.
Anyway. Thing, right? So I might say a lawyer. I actually am a lawyer like Paul. I'm a lawyer in Scotland, so obviously we have different systems, and I don't have access to the Law Society's papers and things in England. I've got the legal papers here. But I have spoken to people from his graduating class, and he is a piece of shit. He's a sexist, homophobic, misogynist, racist, narcissistic, up himself, smart ass piece of shit, and no one likes him.
So just like he is on YouTube then.
See the way he plays those word games where he'll try and redefine a word. That was it. That's his whole thing.
So
you know, he's
if they're from his graduating class, that means he actually graduated?
Yeah, he does actually have a law degree. I was when he submitted that thesis, which you know, for his master's degree, which is hilarious. Right? I mean, mine was rejected. Mine was rejected in the first instance for having a spelling mistake in a citation, right? And I had to take it away and resubmit it. But when he had to make it public, there was a lot of people who were very unhappy because he'd made, I think it was almost £2,500 that he'd got in donations to, because it's not, obviously it's not free, and people wanted their money back, you know. And there was talk of a class act, people taking a class action against him. There's a group of people, but then because the donations came from like Europe and America and other places, it was difficult.
Yeah, which court does hear? Which court would hear that?
Yeah. It would be a British court, but then you'd have to, you know, people from America who maybe donated $20, are they going to pay $200 to get their 20 back?
Exactly.
You know, so I was initially involved in putting the class action together, but it fell apart because of the international boundaries and whose jurisdiction would it fall under. So, but yeah, he's exactly in real life as he is on YouTube.
Yeah. Mind you, being a complete arsehole is usually a qualification for becoming a lawyer, but yeah.
Well, it's not a disadvantage.
No. Well, you want to be a complete arsehole to your opponents, put it that way. You need to be really nice to your clients, but yeah. Anyway, we're not here to talk about lawyers. What I do want to cover, though, is the destructive end result of having this conspiracy mindset. And Dead Kennedy in Space, who was going to come when this was originally scheduled, but apparently can't come today, did a brilliant video a few days ago, and I just want to play you some of it. Let me do that. Wish I could share it quick. And let's play.
They're not hurting anyone. Let them think the Earth is flat. They don't actually do any harm. Well, I've been saying this for years, but wrong. I've said before that flirts are dangerous for a number of reasons. If you're willing to believe that a nameless, faceless they are capable of covering up the shape of the very ground you stand on, then you will be capable of anything. They're capable of faking the existence of the moon. They're capable of hiding massive military, capable of distributing further methods of control through accepted public means like vaccination. And that brings us to this named Stephen Brandenburg, who also happens to be a flat earther who thinks the sky isn't real, sabotaged 5 vaccines. He intentionally removed them from cold storage, rendering them ineffective after being left out. Wisconsin officials did their best to race they were less effective than they should have been, and notified those who received the sabotage doses.
What happened in Wisconsin was no accident. We have moving vials of Moderna's vaccine from a fridge. The company fired the Milwaukee area employee. The FBI is investigating. Aurora rushed to give 57 doses before the post-refrigeration window expired. But the company's president said today they should.
Pharmacist accused of sabotaging COVID vaccine at the hospital. Diana, the FBI is harmful, but he also believes the Earth is flat. You're looking into this.
Yeah, Adrian. So we're learning these new details based on some new investigators. So when the coworker found the vaccines outside the refrigerator, she suspected Brandenburg was responsible, partly because Brandenburg believes, quote, the Earth is flat and the sky is a shield the government put up to keep people from seeing God. The records also include an email.
Brandenburg told investigators he believes the Moderna vaccine was, quote, not safe for people from them and change their DNA, a claim for which there is zero evidence and is most often touted by religious fundamentalists who 30 years ago would have been complaining about the universe. Believed these idiots, and now, because of him, humanity is that much further away from being rid of COVID all. Since Brandenburg confessed his guilt, he has lost his job at the hospital, was ordered to surrender his firearms, and has been barred from serving as a pharmacist. This man of his entire career because he believed what he was told on the internet. Worse, he endangered others and cost the hospital between $8,000 and $10,000 in damaged vaccines. So, where does it end, Flurfs? You're willing to harass children, manipulate the elderly, and now physically stop a vaccine that can bring in the pandemic we're all very, very sick of. What's the next step? Grab a firearm and take down Moderna headquarters? Bring an explosive into the Johnson Space Center? Now would be a good time for me to put up that photo a conspiracist once posted to NASA's Facebook page and then mysteriously disappeared after a probable visit from Homeland Security. These people have no understanding of when they go too far. Anthony Riley is still making videos about how that nurse is dead even though she isn't, and has received death threats. That worries me. If you thought Flat Earth wasn't dangerous, you'd best think again.
All right. He does such a brilliant job, Dead Kennedy in Space. And apparently I'm breaking up a little, and unfortunately that's my internet, and I can't do anything about that. It's been that way the last couple of days, unfortunately. But yeah, that just goes to show that that conspiracy mindset. This guy was a pharmacist, so he's been to university, he's got himself a degree, and pharmacy is not easy to get. He understands how these chemicals affect the body, how vaccines work, and yet he somehow had got himself worked up that this was something the opposite of that. I just don't see how that ever comes about.
It could be any number of things that's caused that. You know, he could have had some trauma or some anxiety that he hasn't been able to deal with, and he's refocused. You know, he's just transferred that somewhere else, quite a common thing. You know, it's like displacement activity, and he's retreated back to his religious beliefs to try and cope with changes or trauma. And he's went online, you know, looking for a community that he can talk to about these things. And they've been, oh, you're a pharmacist, you should know better. You know, it changes your DNA and blah, 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 blah. And he knows perfectly well it doesn't, but it's that dangerous mindset where when someone's vulnerable, though, you know, and it's, you comfort them, you pacify them, oh, you're a good person, you know, but you're in a position of thought, you can do something, you know, you can be the hero. And he's went out, he's messed his whole life up, you know, over something that's so stupid it didn't achieve anything. You know, was it 500 doses, I think, were spoiled out of millions? It was a pointless act of rebellion.
Well, not only that, maybe one of those doses were going to someone who would have survived otherwise if they'd received it.
Yeah.
He could well have killed someone. I mean, it's unlikely, but it's possible.
No, this is the danger of these are getting sucked into this mindset. You know, like Pizzagate, that guy walked into a pizza shop, you know, to shoot up, you know, these people who had a sex dungeon in a basement that doesn't even exist. That's how little research he'd done. You know, he'd heard there was this child trafficking thing going on in the basement of a pizza shop that doesn't even have a basement. You know, if you looked at the city plans, you would see that it's a one level. That's it. You know, but then it's a dangerous mindset. I mean, 99.9% of them are just harmless idiots that come home from their boring jobs, go online and talk about UFOs and, you know, whatever. And that's fine. But people like Thompson and Dubé scan those chat groups looking for those people, that 1% or that 0.1% that will take that step further. You know,
it's the point where your distrust of your innate distrust of government, in essence, takes over and becomes obsessional. And once the government have lied about one thing, they've lied about everything. And at that point, then your reactions, you don't look at things objectively, because the only thing that you see in front of you is the lie, and you chase that lie, and that is it. And then, and in their mind, at that point, they are doing the public service. Whereas in reality, they couldn't be doing any bigger disservice. It's just that they're blinded to the truth by that obsessional nature over that lie.
Yeah. Look what happened on January the 6th. You know, just constant drip, not even drip fed, it was like force fed fake news, propaganda and lies over and over again, reinforcing your good people, your patriots. You know, fight for your country. This is your election. They're taking it from you. And they stormed the Capitol, heavily armed in a lot of cases.
And he'd been feeding them that information for 2 months.
Yeah. As soon as he knew he was going, as soon as he realised he was going to lose that election, that's when it started in earnest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he did it during the last election, didn't he? When he actually won it, and even when he was in the lead, he was still saying that the election was being rigged against him.
Yeah.
Even though he was in the lead. And then all of a sudden, when he won, it was the most credible election. It was the best election in American history. Oh, what? Because you won.
He still wasn't happy, though.
everything.
Yeah. He lost. He won the electoral college, but lost the popular vote.
Yeah.
But that can't happen because he's a malignant narcissist. He can't have lost. That's impossible. So it must have been fake. Even though he won, he still disputed the result. You know, there's something seriously wrong with somebody that will say, I won, but I didn't win by enough.
It's the definition of it's pure arrogance, isn't it? It's perfect arrogance.
You see it in sports fans.
Well, that's what politicians are about.
Their team lost, but in sports fans say, "Oh, my team lost," but they should never have had that goal. The opposite, but they hand them the trophy. It doesn't say, Team A won, but really it was Team B because that goal should be disallowed. But that's how Trump wants to rewrite history. He wants to disallow anything that goes against him if it doesn't work his way. And he attracts people with the same mindset. People who feel abandoned. They don't have a steady anchor in their life. They don't have steady employment. They can't form relationships or whatever. And they see him as this figurehead going, he understands me, he gets me. He's a billionaire. He doesn't give a crap about you.
Let's move away from politics.
Yeah.
So we're on to the. Oh, absolutely. It's an example, but I'd rather not get anywhere near politics. I want all my viewers to, no matter what their political persuasion, to enjoy watching my streams. So I'll just move. Which there it is. How do we break them out of it? I mean, we were talking about this pharmacist is class education and his intelligence, and yet he still didn't. We need to. I was hoping Speak Truth to be joining us for this, but he can't do it at the moment. He was going to come to the previously scheduled stream, but he's an example of how it's possible to break out of it. And so he gives us hope that some of these people aren't completely lost. And I'm not proposing any solution here. I'm just saying two things that I think I can do, at least. Remember that they're human beings, because so much of that, their behavior is human. It might be crazy to most of humans,
yeah,
but it's still human behavior. You know, like Pratt, he's still a father. He still loves his kids. It might be dangerous for those kids for him to be around, given the things that he says, but you know, he's still a father. And being a father, I know what that feels like. And the other thing, which is the whole reason I started my channel, I know a lot of people have done this, started their channels for this reason too. We need to make the verifiable truth available and show them that it really is objectively verifiable, not subjectively. Because if you look at Flurf channels, they're putting out any old crap that they seem to like, and they're not really objectively proving anything. No one, over the last year, I've heard so many people ask at Flurf, give me one piece of evidence that proves a flat Earth. No one has ever given any. And that should tell you something about your point of view. If your point of view has never had any proof given, especially when you ask them, what's the piece of proof that made you convince you that the Earth was flat? And they still don't give an answer, you know? They'll say, oh, well, it can't be a ball because of this, and then you can debunk that easily. But there's no proof, positive proof for the flat Earth ever given anywhere. Most of it, to me, is emotional arguments, and people like Eric Dubay who are very persuasive. They're not right, they're wrong, but they're also very persuasive, especially to people who don't know better. And there's plenty of people out there who don't know better. Not everyone has a science education, like I was saying about the artists earlier on. So to me, those are two things that we can do. I don't know if Paul has anything else to offer, or Tusk.
I think I've seen. I subscribe to Speak Truth, Seek Truth. Just the stuff that he says, he was in the correct position to receive that information, and I think, remember, from a psychological perspective, a lot of this comes from an innate subconscious reaction to an anxiety created situation or being faced with facts that you don't particularly like. And then it gathers momentum from there. But almost the segue, the gateway is that initial reaction to a situation that you don't like. And then from there, you find acceptance and everything else. And I think there's a social construct behind people coming out of these conspiracy theories. He came out of conspiracy theory, you know, he came out of flat Earth simply because it was the right time for him. It was the right time for him to open his eyes and hear that information and actually absorb it and believe it. And I think Mr. Sensible's been speaking a lot to Kyle Adams, ironically a guy with a master's in art from the Flat Earth Institute of Science. It's a misnomer, isn't it? Contradiction in terms.
He created the Flat Earth Institute of Science.
Oh, did he?
Which makes me laugh every time I hear it.
Yeah, it's such a contradiction in terms. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's absolutely beautiful.
That's created so they can peer review their own material and say it's peer reviewed.
But even when Mr. Sensible's been talking to him, I've got to say that, and Kyle always interacts with Mr. Sensible really, really sort of maturely, and it's a very, very balanced conversation. And it's almost like he's holding an intellectually honest position, so he'll accept when he's wrong. And I think that is an indicator of, actually, you know what, I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to accept if I'm wrong. And if you provide enough information to people, as you are doing, as Mr. Sensible's doing, as FTFE, as you know, all the debunkers are doing, if you provide enough of that information out there at the right time, and people are in the right frame of mind and in the right position socially to receive that information, they'll come out of it on their own.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I'm doing this series on Flat Earth killers, ideas in themselves which destroy the nation of the Flat Earth. Number 5 will be released tomorrow morning Australian time, night British time, I guess. Or late? Is it later? No, tomorrow night. Yes. Yeah, about 22 hours from now. And yeah, if you have to prove any of these wrong to believe in flat Earth, and I don't believe anyone can prove them wrong because they match up with reality. In fact, I demonstrate that in each of the videos about them. So if people are out, if you're saying that for the people to come back to the light, for want of a better term, just need to have the information they need at the right time, then I think I'm doing a service to them by putting these things out. And I'm not just saying just me; every debunker is doing this. And I think that's important that we are out there and doing this all the time, especially when we've got the science background and science knowledge and the ability to communicate as well. I think that's important because people like Eric Bay have the ability to communicate, but they don't have the knowledge. They just make it up.
I think what's more. Go ahead.
Sorry, I've been quite vocal. I did a live chat with Mr. Sensible probably 3-4 weeks ago, maybe, and I was quite open about it on there. I think science, medicine, like I've come away from law. I went through the military, and now I've found my way into psychology, and now getting involved in sort of medicine and psychology. I've come to realize really quickly that medicine, psychology, the sciences are really, really piss poor at describing things in a real simplistic way. And I think the more you can break things down into a simplistic way, the more digestible you can make that information, the more on side people are going to get, the more they're going to understand it, the more they're going to subscribe to it, and then the more they're going to pick it up. So you guys, as a debunking community doing this, breaking down the science into digestible, understandable elements, the more you can do that, the more people will just switch mindsets when the time is right for them, and it's fantastic.
I think what's maybe a little more important to say than the science of it, because some of them, they're never going to understand the science. They're not interested in understanding the science. But when you look at someone like Seek Truth, Speak Truth, it was because conspiracy cats, befriended them. He didn't just browbeat them with facts and knowledge and science. He actually reached out and said, "Look, man to man, let's be friends, let's chat." And he spent some time with them, talking to them. Not just about flat Earth and conspiracy theories. How are you getting on today? What's up? How's work? Blah 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 blah. And they formed a relationship, which is they've maintained that. And I think you see a lot in the side chat, especially on the live streams. Oh, you're a moron, you're an idiot, and these people are stupid and blah blah. All that does is reinforce their belief that they're right. Otherwise, why would we attacking them? You can't find any evidence. Well, that's just proof. Otherwise, why would they go to so much trouble to hide it? The fact that there's no evidence is just proof positive that it's been hidden from them. So I don't think you're not going to get to very many people that way, by just shouting at them, blah, 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 you're a moron, look at this. And here's like a treatise on the Rayleigh criterion from 1974. Go read that, then come back and talk to me about how light behaves. I think reaching out to people and stop insulting them is probably a little more important. They'll come when they're ready, but you have to leave the door open. If you're constantly shouting at people and calling them morons, who wants to sit down with somebody that thinks they're an idiot? I wouldn't. I may find a belief I have is completely wrong, and I go, right, okay, where have I gone wrong? But if someone's just called me an idiot, I'm not going to sit down with them.
If you
Unfortunately, I think there's.
Sorry.
There you go, Paul. You're the professional here.
So one of the techniques that we use with in psychology when we're dealing with people who got extreme belief is that the first thing we do is we accept it, and we accept their belief, whether we appreciate it or whether we understand it or whether it makes sense to us is absolutely irrelevant. And I think if you accept that people hold these beliefs for whatever reason, that's your in. That's your in, and you're absolutely right, Tusk. As soon as you attack somebody for having a certain belief, you depersonalize them, you push them away because you immediately then at war with that person. So you're never going to break down a barrier. You're never going to convince them of something that's blatantly obvious. You could tell them that that Earth is solid and water's wet. They're not going to believe you because you're in a row. Whereas if you approach somebody with, okay, I understand your belief and I accept it, I respect what you're saying, however, and then very much do it as Mr. Sensible's doing with Kyle Adams, or as, you know, obviously Conspiracy Cats did with STST. If you approach it from that perspective, Tusk, you're absolutely spot on. You're not doing it from a confrontational perspective. You do it from a, okay, let's discuss this, let's rationalize it, let's talk it through, and let's see where your mind goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's we're about to get a question from Mr. Clapperjack when he formulates a question properly. I just want to get back to what you were saying about communicating it in digestible amounts. And I just want to give you a preview of my video that's being released tomorrow. Let's share. Oops, come on. Why didn't you work? Oh, there we go. So, oh, what happened? That went down for some reason. There we go. Cool. Yeah, this is just part of it, so I'm not going to give the whole game away, but I want to see what you think, Paul, and Tusk, of course, if this is simple enough. So the whole premise here is that Southern Hemisphere flights prove the globe because they're not as far as they would be on the flat Earth. So, obviously, there's no plane that can fly that distance without refueling. Certainly not non-stop, and yet planes do fly that distance non-stop, as Greater Sapien proved. Not only that, but this path flies at China, Oops, I'm a little India, bit,
the
Middle
East.
I did too.
Oh, Hugh, just now that should be very easy to check. In our flight.
Okay, a little guess.
On the Globe Earth model, it flies the Great Circle route south of New Zealand, and the total distance is about 11,300 kilometers. Let's see what that looks like on Google Earth. Starting in Santiago this time, we go back to Sydney, and once again, you can see it's a straight line on a globe. So therefore, it's the shortest distance, which makes it the most economical route for the airline to fly. What would it be on the flat Earth? As we said before, the distance to the North Pole from Sydney is 13,000 kilometres, based on the difference between the poles and the equator being about 10,000 kilometres, which has actually been measured. And remembering along lines of longitude, the AE map matches the globe model. So these measurements can't be disputed. The distance between Santiago and the North Pole is roughly the same as Sydney, as they're on very similar latitudes. So we'll call it 13,000 kilometres too. Now this time, to calculate the angle at the North Pole, it goes across the international date line. Santiago's at 71 degrees west longitude and Sydney's at 151 east. But doing the calculation, that gives us an angle of 138 degrees. Plugging that into the triangle calculator, we get a distance across the flat Earth between Sydney and of 24,273 kilometres. Again, more than twice what it actually is. And again, people have flown this. They have verified that the flight only takes as long as it would to match the globe model. If it matched the flat Earth model, the plane would run out of fuel long before it got to Santiago. And again, this path takes you straight over the rich markets of the United States and without stopping and without any passenger ever knowing that they're doing that. It's crazy economically. 2-0 to the globe. Flat Earth is killed once again.
All right, I'll leave it there. So I don't want to give you too much of a preview. I do Sydney, Johannesburg as well, and demonstrate something very similar. But yeah, to me, Google Earth was a very good tool there because I think floats have trouble visualizing how it works on the globe. Yeah, and well, 3D in general, yes. But how you see very clearly that between Santiago and Sydney, it's a straight line. But they think in terms of the Mercator projection. They know it's a projection, but they don't seem to connect a real globe with the Mercator projection, whereas you can see that clearly on Google Earth there. And I think that helps people get that understanding, what we were talking about before, about making it digestible.
Yeah.
Do you think that works well that way?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what the statistics are. I mean, I know sort of this huge proportion of people who do learn and actually understand better visually. and a picture paints 1,000 words. It's
Yeah, so
easier to understand.
I'm hoping when a few flirts see this and they see, I'm hoping a few people say, "Oh, now I get it," because really I didn't get it until I saw it like this. So yeah, it'd be nice to get that sort of feedback from someone out there who didn't really get why the Southern Hemisphere flights disproved flat Earth and proved the globe Earth. So, did Mr. Clapperjack ask his question? I can't see it there. No.
I was watching your video there, Hugh. I went, okay, I can see 3 objections are going to throw up straight away.
Yep.
That's not our model. There is no definitive flat Earth model.
Yep.
Are you trying to use Euclidean geometry on a flat plane? that's absolutely, that's going to be. And jet fuel is a hoax.
Yes.
Oh, damn.
We said this earlier. They just make up shit so that they don't have to deal with the realities.
Well, yeah, you just make it up. Whoever's got the loudest voice is top of the tree that day. So if you can come up with something, no matter how ridiculous it is, somebody will go, yeah, you're right. But yeah, if that gets the right person at the right time, and they go, hang on a minute. According to that map, if you fly from the UK to Australia, you have to go down to the Emirates and then turn around and go back the way you came. And that simply doesn't happen.
I think you've got to remember the people who are shouting the biggest bullshit, don't believe in jet fuel or etc. etc. You're not going to convince them anyway. There's literally nothing that you could convince them of, whether it's fact or not. If they are willing to dispute the ridiculous, then they're out of the game anyway. They're too deep at that point in time.
Some people are just so far down it that I've been. I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know how deep you are into this, Paul, but I know Hugh and I have been accused of being shills, disinfo agents, CIA, FBI, all the rest of it.
The pay would be better.
Yeah. No, I wish I mean, I was going to say a lawyer doesn't pay very well, but that's a fucking lie. But I would like some NASA money. But some people are so invested in themselves that you're never going to get through to them. You're just, those people are. I don't see any value in going after somebody who says jet fuel's a hoax. They're finished. But if someone who's just at that tipping point where it's how you speak to them and how you communicate is going to tip them the right way, But somebody watch that and go, hang on a wee minute. Right, okay, that makes sense. But then if someone like Oakley gets on first and goes, oh, why you believe in that, you bloody moron? You believe in geometry? That's not reality. Maths isn't reality. 1 and 1 is 0. Or like, was it Riley said 5 divided by 0 was 5? Just
in the real world.
In the real world, because you have 5 and apples and I divide them by 0, I've still got 5. No, you don't. But yeah, again, it's how you. I think it's how you parse it and how you couch these little snippets of educational material. If you present it and say, look, come and have a look at this, see what you think, tell me what you think about it, then we can talk. But I think there's too many people in the debunking community that just are always on the attack.
Some people need attacking. But equally there are those people who aren't necessarily as vocal on social media. There are those who are deep into the conspiracies who actually who aren't making videos, who aren't hammering YouTube or doing streams, and those are the people actually who are sort of maybe more receptive in the fullness of time. But you could present the most simple evidence on the planet. If someone is sort of not ready to listen to it, they're not going to accept it. They're just not.
Yeah, that's why I try and do both. I'll attack the stupid like Riley and things like that, and Flat Earth Banjo. But I'll also put up my Flat Earth Killers series, for example. to give the actual information and to show, look, okay, if you're on the globe and you're on the flat Earth, this is how it works for both. It works for the globe. It doesn't work for flat Earth. And that's for the people on the fence in particular. And you got to attack the stupid for the people on the fence as well, I guess, so that they don't fall into their trap of persuasion.
Well, yeah, it's that. If you take down the figurehead, what ends? What changes? You know, if we completely proved that, say, Eric Dubé was a fraud, you know, presented definitive proof that he was a scam artist, this was all a con, would that change anything for the people who are in that community? Would they just go, yeah, that's what you would say? You know, they'll just say that the evidence is fake, you know? So
for the same reason, though, for the same reason as Whitsitt still logs on to Nathan friggin' Oakley.
Despite being abused by it.
Despite being absolutely violated by him on every single on live streams, left, right, and centre. He doesn't care.
He's like a dog fetching the stick you're going to beat him with.
Yes,
absolutely.
You know?
Because being there is enough. Being in your presence is enough. I don't care how much you abuse me. I just want to be with you.
There's definitely an element of masochism there.
Yeah.
You know, but any attention's good attention, be it negative or positive.
Yeah, absolutely, because he gains the gain of self-esteem outweighs the effect of the abuse.
And you learned that as a kid.
Nathan Oakley said my name. You know, he spent his time on me. I must mean something. You know. I don't understand.
So I think it's probably time for us to wrap up. It's getting on to midnight for you guys, and I didn't want to take too much of your time. I also want to thank someone donated $5 Australian to me, although their email address doesn't really tell me who they are. I can't see a corresponding name in the chat. But thank you very much for that. I very much appreciate all donations, and some people have been very generous. So I'm very, very appreciative of all that, because I'm not monetized yet, although I might be very soon. But either way, I make these shows for you guys to enjoy, and I hope you do enjoy it. And every time you express your appreciation for me doing so, I've expressed the appreciation back that you bothered to actually give me some of your hard-earned money for the entertainment I've given you. So thank you very much for that. So in terms of wrapping up, I guess let's have final words. So Paul, do you want to sort of sum up the evening, and what are the key points you think we should leave people with?
As stupid as conspiracy theories really are, there is still a human reaction behind it that we've all got. It's just a level of stupid and misunderstanding that drives people that little bit further. But if you give people the right social circumstance and the right information, they'll come around when they need to.
Okay. Tuss, you got any final thoughts?
Again, don't assume that because they believe in flat earth or whatever, that they're stupid. And don't assume that they're a liar and a scam artist too. They may genuinely believe it. And it's just get to the root of why they believe it and then take it from there, rather than attacking what they say on YouTube. You know, just get to the person, the root of the person.
Absolutely, yeah. I think attacking comes in when you realise you can't help them. So there's nothing else left to do, really. So
it's what Mark said, if you try and teach a horse to whistle, all you've done is waste your time and annoy the horse. You know, just walk away.
Yeah,
I like that.
So Tuss, you don't want us to shill out your channel. So Paul, do you have a channel?
I don't. Listen, this is about the second, I think the third conversation I've had on YouTube on it. So I haven't got anything yet, but maybe in the future.
All right, then. So we can't shill you out. You're obviously not a NASA shill, then.
I'd be anyone's shill right now. I'm that cheap.
Oh, okay.
That's good to know.
All right, so I've got a video out tomorrow morning. Well, it's part of Les Irrelevables, where a bunch of creators get together to release a whole lot of videos together. I think it was 10:45 p.m. UTC on Thursday night is when it's being released, which is I think it's 8:45, 7:45 Eastern Australian time. Of course, daylight savings another app of that. So yeah, look out for that one. Flat Earth Killers number 5, the Southern Hemisphere flights, and I'll take you through that. You got a little preview earlier. It's unusual. I don't think I've ever given a preview before. So I think that'll wrap us up for today. Thanks to everyone in the chat who came along. Really appreciate everyone who came. It was great to see you. And I guess we'll see you next week for another live stream. Oh, hang on. I haven't even set up to do the outro. Geez, I'm useless. It's one of those days today. Let's see. No, not yet. Haven't shared it yet. Right, share screen. Oh, this is smooth action. All right, bye-bye, everyone.
You're despicable. HUGH JARSZ.